Okay, thank you. Uh, Good evening, friends. Uh, First of all, let me thank IFT. I welcome you all to join this program by sparing your time and joining the program. I also thank you, IFT, for giving me this opportunity to interact with the exporters and other stakeholders on this topic, which is AA oblique DFIA versus duty drawback, why and when. Uh, the words here used are AA, which means advance authorization, and DFIA, which stands for duty free import authorization. But we will during the lecture we will be using this abbreviation. I'll of course be taking up the issues relating to advance authorization and DFIA both. I will also take up the issue relating to drawback. I will explain what these schemes are, and then I will make a comparison between the two schemes, and then it will be up to you to decide whether you should go for drawback or you should go for advance authorization or for DFIA. This is all up to you. Both are very popular schemes. People, whatever suits them, go for that. But I will explain in detail what are the parameters, and few things I would like to clarify relating to my lecture or my interaction. That basically I'll be dealing with the concepts. My emphasis will be that certain basic issue I should be able to clear to you. But whenever you are actually acting upon, you should also refer to the text, public notices, notification, etc. So that because things are changing very fast nowadays, and maybe it is quite possible that you are attending lecture today, and now the policies of 1520 is in force, and of course I'll be talking provisions relating to that policy. New foreign trade policy is expected effective from 1st of April 21, because the current policy is expiring is up to 31st March 21. So maybe that lot of changes may be there, or it may come with little bit change. So please refer to the text when you are actually acting upon. And then the what I will do as advised by IFT, that the duration of the lecture is for 2 hours, out of which I'll be using about 1 hour 40 minutes, 1 hour 45 minutes for my talks, and thereafter 15-20 minutes I'll be leaving for the questions. I will try to answer those questions on the spot, but in case then the number of questions are more, or I am not able to answer any question on the spot, then my request will be that you kindly make it mail to madam. She will forward me, and I assure that I'll definitely uh, try to reply to the best of my ability. Now, let me also introduce. My name is J.M. Gupta. I am a retired additional DGFT. I am an Indian Trade Service Officer of 1987 batch, and in this capacity, I also worked in DGFT headquarters as also in the field offices at various positions. So I will also be sharing my experiences with you, because sometimes whatever is written in the policy looks very nice, but there are practical problems that also I'll be talking from time to time, so that you are well aware of what we are doing. Now, I had on earlier two occasions, I had also talked on EOUs and MEIS, etc. And one of the feedback I got was that this program or this interaction has to be bilingual. So, keeping in view that I'll be talking in English and Hindi simultaneously, but most of my talk will be in English, and but of course, wherever required, I will definitely be talking in Hindi also. Just 1 minute. So, and moreover, we will be talking of so many terms which I'll be using during the interaction, which are written in the policy. But and in case, although these are common words, but since we are doing in a legal framework, so you can refer to chapter 9 for any word, the meaning of that word according to the foreign trade policy. So that is all definitions are contained in chapter 9 of the foreign trade policy. Now, the topic on which I have to speak is the duty neutralization, advance authorization, DFIA versus duty drawback. So basically we are talking duty neutralization. Duty, as the word neutralization implies, means that in case there is a effect of any duty, here means custom duty, additional custom duty, safeguard duty, anti-dumping duty, uh, this GST, etc. So these are the generally taxes which are there. So we have to neutralize these taxes. In some of the scheme, these taxes are neutralized. In some of the scheme, these are not neutralized. In some of the scheme, these are partially neutralized. So that also we will be talking. So, but why there is a need to neutralize? Why we are saying that there should not be any effect of the taxes in the business of exports? Because the basic principle of international trade is that at the time of export, we should export the goods or services and not the taxes. Because if taxes are also to be included in the cost and required to be exported, then we will not be competitive in the world market. Suppose if India is imposing custom duties and not refunding in one way or the other, then that and some other country with whom we are competing is not imposing the custom duties, our goods will definitely be higher. Our so and our exporters will not be able to compete. So that's why that is the need of duty neutralization. So keeping in view that taxes should not be exported along with the goods, and only the goods should be exported. So that's why there is a new need of neutralization. And how neutralization? Neutralization is by way of advance authorization or DFIA or drawback. There are other schemes also, like in export, if you are in EOU or in SCZ, there also since these are custom duties are not charged ab initio, so these are neither they are collected nor required to be refunded. But however, when hello, हाँ मैं I hope now my face is now visible. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I was talking that goods should be exported and not the taxes. So हेलो, हाँ रेखा जी, मैं जरा बिजी हूँ, बताइए। मैं एक बार कल सुबह बात कर लूँ आपसे। हाँ ठीक है, ओके। Yeah, sorry, there was some urgent call. So advanced lessons is a very old scheme. It is managed by DGFT, and drawback scheme is managed by customs. Both are very old scheme, time tested, and these are both are very popular. It depends on the circumstances, on the size of the business, on exports, on duty paid, and all that. That whether we should go for drawback or for advance authorization. Uh, Basically, the advance license scheme is for those who are working in the domestic market as well as those who are exporting. So this basically suits to them. If you are a very small exporter uh, who are not dealing with the big orders, or who are not having a good setup, or your rates are not that high, definitely drawback is the choice. Of course, I'll be dealing all these things in detail. But if you are dealing in the domestic market as well in the export market, then probably, and the order of your export orders are quite big, and the stake of duties and interest cost etc. are high, and I'll also be talking about the monetary and non-monetary cost. So if taking into all that, you have to decide whether you should go for advance authorization or for duty drawback. Now, just to give you an idea that what is the size of advance authorization in India, generally people are taking, and what is the amount for which people are taking DFIA. I have roughly calculated that in the year 2017-18, about 21,500 advance authorization were issued with a CIF value of 1 crore, 1,79,243 crore. So average advance authorization value comes to 8.33 crore. Likewise, in 18-19, 23,000 advance authorization were issued with an CI value of 2,05,060 crore. Uh, so average one value CI value for one authorization was 8.9 crore, and likewise in April to December 2019, the average value advance authorization CI value was 7.81 crore. Of course, so in some sectors, the value of advance authorizations are very high, like in the gold advance authorization, and sometimes the value of advance authorization is small. But from my experience, I can say that on an average, an advance authorization is to the extent of about 2, 3, 4, 5 crore. So advance authorizations are people are not taking for a value of 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs like this. So it implies that when the size of the export order or export obligation you are going to discharge is little bit on the higher side, it is more beneficial to take the advance authorization. Otherwise not. Likewise in DFIA, that is duty free import authorization, the average CIF value of one advance authorization was 2.7 crore, 75 crore in 17-18, 2.46 crore in 18-19, and about 1.7 crore in 19-20. So here also people are going DFIA for this much amount. Now, this advanced authorization and DFIA are managed by DGFT, whereas the scheme of drawback is managed by the customs. So uh, if you are dealing with advanced and DFIA, mainly you have to deal with the DGFT, and of course for physical movements of the goods, clearance, etc., you have to deal with custom. But in the drawback, you have to exclusively deal with the custom authorities. That is the directorate of drawback. Now, about the DGFT organization, you are well aware that earlier this office was called the Office of Chief Controller of Import Export. Now it's playing a role of a facilitator, and uh, the when we are talking of advanced authorization and DFIA, basically we are talking about chapter 4 of foreign trade policy, and the relevant text for you in this regard which you have to refer to is foreign trade policy chapter 4. Now the foreign trade policy currently of 2015-20 is in force. It was originally expiring on 31st March 20, but the validity of the policy has been extended to March 21 due to the corona last year. And as I earlier told that this policy, new policy is expected. हम उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि नई पॉलिसी हमारी जो है 1 अप्रैल 21 से उम्मीद है, देखते हैं उसमें क्या क्या चेंजेस आते हैं. But the relevant books which you have to refer to is Foreign Trade Policy Chapter 4, likewise Handbook of Procedure Chapter 4. Then there is another book of Ayat Niryat Form and Appendixes, that is ANF and Appendixes, that is also uh, issued by DGFT, and all ANF are starting with number 4, that is 4A, 4B, 4C, because we are talking of chapter 4. So any ANF which starts with number 4 means it is relating to advanced authorization. Likewise, any appendix which starts with the appendix 4A, 4B, 4C means it is relating to advanced authorization or the duty-free schemes. Now, the very important book which is also issued by Standard Input Output Norms book, that is called SION book in short, and SION is that is Standard Input Output Norm. So, in this book, there are uh, many products for which standard consumption, standard input consumption of inputs per unit of export is given in quantity terms. So, if you are importing uh, according to the SION book, you need not give any justification. Simply, you can say, for example, I want to export shirts, full sleeve shirts, and the fabric allowed as per the SION book is, for example, 2 meter per shirt. I need not give any justification whether I will require 1.9 or 2.1. So long as I am claiming 2, I need not give any justification. I simply apply according to this standard input output norms, and the regional licensing authority, without submission of any corroborative evidence or document, they will issue me the advance authorization. So uh, because the standard input output norms are being fixed for a long time, so mostly the items which are very regular or which are regularly being exported, and people have supplied the relevant data and information, DGFT has tried to fix the standard input of norms. This is quite bulky book, and probably for the regular items, all standard input output norms are there. Uh, Here the goods are classified according to the nature of the industry, like engineering goods, chemicals, electronics, textile, leather, plastic, food, handicraft, miscellaneous, like this. So you can find out what is your item, and if it is finding a place in the standard input output norm, the operation of the advanced authorization is very convenient and easy for you, because you can just follow the norms and apply to DGFT. Of course, if you want to get more than the standard input output norms, you can, or if in case the standard input output norms are not fixed, you can apply for fixation, or you apply get it ad hoc norms, then you simply repeat it. Now the facility of others, because all the norms are published and put on the website, so even others can follow in case the standard is even the ad hoc norms are fixed for you, others can follow and take the advanced lessons. So this is and then another book is called HS classification book, where harmonize all HS code up to 8-digit levels are given. So this book is required because at the time of application you have to give the HS code also for your export and import items. So you have to give the exact code, so that after at the time of fulfillment of export obligation, or at the time of import, or at the time of claiming any drawback on the items uh, on which for which you are not getting the advance license, there is it's hassle free, and there is no problem. So all these books are there. Then of course uh, there are notification, public notices, circular, etc. are issued from time to time, which is all updated on DGFT site. Then there are norms committee which are working in the office of DGFT for fixation of norms, or for fixation of ad hoc norms, or where people applies for advanced authorization where CON are not there, and all their decisions are updated. So you can see all any decision of any committee anytime, and you can refer to that. So these are the basics on DGFT. Then let us talk about the schemes. That is, I will first talk about the drawback scheme. Drawback scheme, as I mentioned, it is managed by the Directorate of Drawback and the custom authorities for the purpose of disbursement, etc. Uh, the legal framework of drawback is given in section 75 and 76 of Customs Act 1962. Then there are customs and central excise rules and service drawback rules 1995, which were also modified in 2017, that is after the introduction of GST. And then friends, let us understand what exactly, when we are say it is the drawback, then what exactly is drawback? The definition of drawback is given in the rules, that is, drawback in relation to any goods manufactured in India or exported means the rebate of duty excluding integrated tax leviable under section subsection 7 and compensation cess leviable under so and so of the Custom Act, chargeable on any imported material or excisable material used in the manufacture of such goods. In simple language, basically the drawback scheme neutralize the basic custom duty paid on the inputs uh, for the uh, exported goods. So in export, at the time of export, whatever you are exporting, whatever duties custom duties have been paid on the inputs which are imported or on which excise duty has been levied. So it repeats on that. Prior to the introduction of GST, even the local custom duties for the domestically procured goods were rebated. But however, after the introduction of GST, the GST is not rebated in uh, drawback because there are separate regulations for refund of GST. So we should be very much clear that after the introduction of GST, the since the local excise duties have gone, so and GST is not rebated under the drawback scheme. It is only the custom duties which are rebated. And at present, the notification number 7 of, dated 28 January 2020, the All India rate of drawback have been published by this notification, which has been amended from time to time. So what are the current rates of drawback? You can refer to this circular and find out what are the drawback rates. So these are the text. This is the act, then rules and the schedule. Now friends, the drawback is of two types. One is the all industry rate and another is the brand rate. Now, what are the all industry rate? All industry rate is it's a published rate calculated on some average rate, average consumption, average import rate, custom duty suffered by the product, average export price, and then described as a percentage of the FOB value. So, and as I told, drawback rate only neutralize the custom duties and not the GST. So all India industry rate, as I told, a schedule is published and which I have mentioned that at present it has been notified by number 7 oblique 2020 dated 28 January 2020. Now this all India rate is basically an average rate based on the average quantity of consumption, average value of imports, duties suffered thereon, and then an average rate is calculated and notified. The advantage of this is that since it is based on certain calculation which is already verified by the government, by the duty drawback, you need not give any proof at the time of claim that whether you have paid duties or you have not paid duties or if you have paid duty in excess or short. Simply if your product is appearing in the drawback schedule, that is all industry rate has been fixed, simply you can get that rate without submission of any additional document, without submission of any proof. So in this way, if all India industry rates are fixed, getting drawback is very easy because in the shipping bill itself you have to file a drawback shipping bill. You have to mention the uh, schedule number and all the required details, and that itself is deemed as an application and you get the drawback. So if all industry rates are have been fixed, it's very easy to get drawback. Since your exports have already been completed, you and there is no obligation, there is no issue whether the government can charge you with anything because exports have already taken place, your rates are already in place. You get it's very transparent and very easy to get drawback at the all industry rate. Now, how again? The budget comes is on 1st of February. There are certain changes relating to custom duties. So after the budget is announced, the duty drawback asks for various data on consumption, on rates, raw material rates, duties, export prices, and it advises all the bodies like export promotion councils, FIO, trade associations, individual exporters to come forward, submit the required information so that the all industry rate can be fixed. If your item was appearing earlier and if you think the rate was not okay, you can submit additional information or you can submit the required information so that the rate can be modified accordingly. If your item was not finding a place in the earlier All India Industry Rate Schedule, you can submit the information and get the rate fixed. And it also collect information from various field formations on all these consumption rates, etc., and then taking all into account an average rate is fixed, that is called all industry rate. Now these rates are generally fixed as a percentage of FOB value of exports, and but sometimes these are also linked to the quantity of exports. Let us say sometimes you will find the schedule 3% of FOB value, or sometimes you will find 100 rupees per kg. So generally it is expressed as a percentage of FOB value, but in some cases you will find it as per the quantity. Now, moreover, because the data are very large, the same item is sometimes exported as a very high price. For example, let me take an example of shirt. Shirt may be of 200 rupees, shirt may be of 500 rupees, shirt may be of 2000 rupees. So like that. So since the products are not homogeneous and there is a big difference in the prices, etc., or the inputs which have been used, so in some cases the value caps have been given, that whatever may be your price, but for per unit you will not get more than this drawback. That is called the value cap. So in case value cap is there, even if the rates your uh, drawback amount comes more than if you calculate it on the basis of FOB value, but if cap has been provided, then of course आपका उतना ही ड्रॉबैक कम हो जाएगा, कैप के हिसाब से आपको कैलकुलेट करना पड़ेगा. और ये इसलिए भी किया जाता है कि लोग इसको मिसयूज ना करें, ज़्यादा ड्रॉबैक लेने के लिए अपनी वैल्यू को ना बढ़ा दें. ऐसे कुछ सेंसिटिव जगह पे या जहाँ पे कोई इस तरह की बात होती है वहाँ पे वैल्यू कैप लगा दी जाती है. लेकिन फिर भी बहुत सारे आइटम्स पे आप अगर शेड्यूल देखेंगे तो जनरली जो रेगुलर आइटम्स हैं उन पे ऑल इंडस्ट्री रेट फिक्स्ड है और इसको लेना बहुत ही आसान है. नाउ दूसरा रेट आता है इसमें ब्रांड रेट. नाउ one is the all industry rate, second is the brand rate. Now where brand rate is given, in case you are not finding your item where all industry rate have not been announced. So and since you have exported, you have to get neutralization of the duties paid, and all industry rate is not there, वो तो है नहीं, तो आप कैसे लेंगे? तो आप उसके लिए ब्रांड रेट के लिए अप्लाई कर सकते हैं और इसके लिए जो लीगल प्रोविजंस हैं वो रूल 6 में दिए गए हैं. Rule 6 of the drawback rules. Uh, uh, when the all India industry rates are not there. Second situation will be maybe that your all industry rates are there, but you find these are not sufficient to neutralize your actual duty pay. So here the rules is that in case the all industry rates are lesser than 80% of the actual duty paid or actual duty suffered by you, then in that case also you can go for the brand rate. Suppose if you feel that you have suffered a duty of rupees 100, and according to the calculation, the if your all industry rates are there, but you are getting neutralization to the extent of say 60 rupees, then if you opt for that, it means you are not getting complete neutralization. So in that case, you can approach the drawback authorities saying that मैंने तो देखिए 100 रुपये इस पर एक्चुअल खर्च चुकी हैं, लेकिन मुझे तो 60 रुपये मिल रहे हैं, तो आप मेरा ब्रांड रेट फिक्स कर दीजिए. नाउ टू फिक्स द ब्रांड रेट you have to give entire document proving that on this export you have actually paid 100 rupees as your duty. So you have to pay, submit the consumption data, you have to pay, submit the actual duty information, whatever proof of whatever duty you have paid, and then those will be subject to verification by the field formation. They will give a report, and then if they find that whatever you are claiming is correct, your brand rate will be fixed, and then you will get the duty neutralization or the brand rate at a higher rate as compared to the all industry rate. So this is the brand rate, and but since it is others cannot follow, because the brand rate is for you, because you have paid more duties. So if others also want to get the brand rate at that time, they have to submit the same documents which you are submitting. And it is not that consignment wise you have to submit the information. Once your brand rate is fixed, the excise, the competent authority can say your same rate will be applicable to other consignments also, and so on. So basic advantage of all industry rate is that no proof is required, whereas in the brand rate you have to give the all information relating to your actual payment, actual consumption, etc. Now in the brand rate there is one simplified scheme also, where it is applicable, it is available to some selected exporters, and where on the basis of whatever you are saying, without waiting for the verification report from the field information, your rates are fixed provided your information is verified by the chartered accountant or the chartered engineers. And you have also to give an undertaking that in case it is found wrong, then you will refund the excess drawback along with the interest, etc. And but this is as I told, it is available to some specified categories and not available to all. Now another more thing is that special economic zone and EOUs are not eligible to get drawback on their exports, because they are not suffering any duty, and the drawback scheme is basically it provides for the rebate on the duty paid, and since they have not paid any duty, they are otherwise getting the duties exemption, so they are not eligible to get the drawback. Then what are the advantage of drawback scheme? Number one, if all India industry rates have been fixed, it's very simple to operate. Then Second is that since your exports have already been completed, you have done whatever was required at your end, and you need not do any follow-up like I will come to when I come to the advance authorization. There are a lot of formalities relating to revalidation or EU extension or closure of your scheme or getting your norms fixed from the norms committee, etc. So there is no such hassle in the drawback. Third thing is that the material imported under the advance authorization is subject to actual user condition, whereas in the drawback you get an amount, it is already encashed and you can use it the way you like. So moreover, I will also come to these are the monetary aspect. I will also come to the non-monetary aspects like the hassles in the advance authorization which are not there in the drawback scheme when particularly when the all industry rate are fixed, and the hassles in advance authorization are that every with every consignment you have to mention the file number, you have to even if you miss the file number in one consignment, your entire advance license can be in problem, you may not get the benefit. And when I discuss the advance authorization, I will be discussing all these things. So this is uh, all about drawback, I mean concept wise. Now I will come to the advance authorization and DFIA. Now when it comes to the advance authorization and DFIA, the lot of restrictions have been placed, or lot of, I will not say restriction, I will say lot of procedural formalities have been are in place, and the reason is that the at the time of imports, the goods are allowed without payment of duty, and since they enter in the domestic market and the goods have entered into the domestic market without payment of duty. So to that extent, revenue of the government is involved. If it is misused, it means the government is not getting the revenue which it would have got otherwise. So lot of regulations are in place, like the utilization of the material or getting the export obligation fulfilled or where the material is to be stored. Time limits have been put in place in the time in which you have to fulfill your export obligation, or in case you are not able to fulfill the export obligation, what will be the penalties. So a lot of regulations are in place, and but this is because the revenue of the government is involved. Now since many of you are familiar with the advance authorization and the DFIA, but still uh, to begin with, although many provisions are same for advance authorization and DFIA, but both are different. I will come to that, what are the difference, and then I will also sum up what are the difference. But before that, quickly let us see what is the advance authorization and DFIA scheme. Now, these schemes are mentioned in Chapter 4 of the Foreign Trade Policy, and the objective of this chapter is to enable duty-free import of inputs for export production, and in case you have made export prior to import, then to replenish the inputs of duty remission. So it basically it allows the import of inputs duty free. The schemes are two types. One is the duty exemption scheme. Exemption means you are not supposed to pay the duty एब इनिशियो फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग, जब जैसे ही इंपोर्ट करते हैं इंपोर्ट के टाइम पे ड्यूटी ही नहीं देनी है. सो basically two schemes have been named. One is the advance authorization scheme, which includes advance authorization from annual requirement, and another is DFIA, that is duty free import authorization. Then seconds are duty remission scheme. It means first you pay the duty and then these are being neutralized. This is in duty drawback scheme, which I have already discussed. Now, what is advance authorization? It's an authorization issued by DGFT for duty-free import of inputs which are physically incorporated in the export product. So one requirement is that those goods should be physically incorporated in the uh, exported goods. But an allowance for wastage is given. For example, if you are importing 100 kg and out of that 5 kg go as waste, so the export product should contain at 95 kilo of the raw material, and which should be verifiable according to the technical things. So uh, in making normal allowance for wastage, then, in addition to the inputs, fuel, catalyst, uh, oil, etc., which are consumed or utilized in the process of production, are also allowed. Uh, uh, then, in addition, 10% mandatory spares, which are to be exported along with the goods, to up to the value 10% of the CII value of the authorization, are also allowed duty free. Now, these advanced authorization can be issued either on the basis of standard input-output norms, which I discussed earlier, that there is a book published by DGFT in which that if you want to export 1 unit of export of a particular goods, what are the inputs which are allowed to you, uh, as which is a standard, means you need not submit any additional documents or any proof of consumption. Simply these will be allowed. And second is when standard input or output norms are not there, or you want something over and above the input output norms, then it is called self declaration or no norms cases. There also you can get the advance authorization, but of course the cases have to go to norms committee. Then uh, another scheme is self ratification scheme, as per para 4.7a of the foreign trade policy, where the cases need not go to the norms committee, but there are certain regulations for that, and which are mentioned in para 4.07a, and the eligibility is only to the uh, authorized economic operators, and uh, this may be subject to audit, etc. So, but it's not very popular, and not many people are opting for this. Now, for spices, the advance authorization rules are that for some purpose it can be allowed, but say for cleaning, grading, repacking, etc., these are not issued. Now, who is the person who can apply for advance authorization? He may be a manufacturer exporter or a merchant exporter. Manufacturer exporter means who manufacture the goods. Merchant exporter means who does not manufacture, but with the help of a sporting manufacturer who can manufacture, get the goods manufactured and then export the goods. Uh, Advance authorization can be for physical exports, including exports to SCZ, intermediate supplies, that is when you have a tie-up with the ultimate exporter, and whatever goods you are supplying to him, you take a license against the invalidation letter, and you get the inputs for that. Duty free, you manufacture the goods and then you supply goods to the ultimate exporter. So that is intermediate supply, or supplies against getting the deemed export benefit, that is supply to EPCG holder or to supplies to EOU, etc. Those which are listed in chapter 7 of the policy, or supply of stores on board of foreign going vessels provided C on are fixed. So these are the eligibility condition. You can also get generally you are getting the advance authorization as and when you require according to the orders or as per your convenience. But uh, an option has been given that if you don't want to go to for advance authorization again and again, then you can apply advance authorization for annual requirement. The rules are given in para 4.06 of the foreign trade policy, but basically it's suit to them whose items are few and who do not want to go to advance the for taking advance authorization again and again. They take one license or two licenses and then they start operation. Of course, that is eligibility is there. It is up to 3%, 100% of the FOB value of the last year exports. Now, another thing in advance authorization that you have to achieve a value addition. Value addition means uh, whatever, because when the government is having a scheme, the you should earn some foreign exchange for the country. You should have a net foreign exchange earner. Means you are importing the goods, so you are paying the foreign exchange, and at the time of exports you are earning, so your earnings have to be more than what you spend. So this is that is value addition, and minimum value addition for advance authorization is 15%. And how it is calculated? FOB value minus CIF value divided by CIF value of the license of the authorization. And at the time of calculation of CIF value of the authorization, we have also to include all imported product or indigenous product on which you are intending to claim drawback, duty drawback. So one is the advance authorization value, plus in application there is a column that which are the other items which are uh, on which you want to take duty drawback benefit. So that also you have to include, and the formula is given in 4.08 of the foreign trade policy, and minimum value addition has to be 15% in the case of advance authorization. And of course there are uh, some items for which the valuation prescribed valuation is lesser than 15%, and for tea the minimum value addition is 50%, and for gem and jewelry sector the value addition norms are different, but since not many people are involved in gem and jewelry sector, I will not be taking it separately. You can read it in chapter 4. Now there are certain items which are not eligible uh, for under advanced license scheme in case the standard input output norms are not fixed. That is on the self declaration basis or no norms basis. You cannot take advanced license if the import involves any one of the following, which is given in para 4.11 of the foreign trade policy. I'll quickly read out all vegetable edible oil in chapter 15, 20, all types of cereals, spices, uh, all types of fruits, horn, honey, etc. So these are items are given in para 4.11 of the foreign trade policy, which you can read. Uh, if in case the standard input output norms are fixed, you can get, but only on no norms basis you cannot get these items if input involved any of these items. Then sometimes in the standard input output norms, the generic input is given or an alternative input is given. So you have a choice to select any of the input because it is alternative or a generic input. So since you have been given a choice, you have to name the specific input which you have used in at the time of export, and only that input will be allowed. At the time of redemption, the regional authorities will see which input you have actually used and which input you have actually uh, imported. And in case there is a mismatch, it will be a violation of the advance authorization condition. So you have to ensure that whatever has been imported is actually used in the exported products. Similarly, at many places, technical characteristics, particularly in some sensitive items, have to be given. So wherever they are required, there is a requirement of giving the technical specification, you should give the technical specification also, because whatever you have used in the export product, import of only that kind or import with that technical specification should will only be allowed. So this you have to keep in mind. Similarly, there are certain in certain cases there is a pre-import condition. Although in एडवांस लाइसेंस जनरली ऐसा होता है कि आप अपने स्टॉक में से भी पहले माल को यूज कर सकते हैं और उसमें से बाद में उस माल को रिप्लेनिश कर सकते हैं। लेकिन कुछ केसेस में ये कंडीशन लगी हुई है कि पहले आपको इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा, उसी मटेरियल को आपको यूज करना पड़ेगा और फिर आपको एक्सपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा। तो अगर कोई ऐसा चीज़ है तो आपको वो भी ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा। और ये प्री इंपोर्ट कंडीशन आपकी स्टैंडर्ड इनपुट आउटपुट नॉर्म्स में भी दी जा सकती है कि ये दिस आइटम इंपोर्ट ऑफ दिस आइटम इज सब्जेक्ट टू प्री इंपोर्ट कंडीशन, और देर इज वन अपेंडिक्स विच इज 4J where certain items are given, name of certain inputs are given which are subject to pre-import condition. That is, you have to first import and then you have to export. Now, which duties are exempted uh, for at the time of import in the case of advance authorization? It almost exempt all duties. That is, the names of duties are given in 4.14 of the foreign trade policy. That is basic custom duty, additional custom duty, education cess, anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty, safeguard duty, transition product specific safeguard duty, and also the GST. If you are importing in advance authorization, GST is also exempted. Now, although you are taking the duty advantage if you are taking the advance authorization, you are also eligible for drawback only on those inputs which are not there in the standard input output norms and on which duties have been paid. But these items have to be declared in the your application, and then as per the rates decided by the drawback authorities, you can also claim drawback along with the advance authorization basis. But this is very much limited. Number one, these items are actually duty paid and not appearing in standard input output norms. Now, all advance authorizations are uh, uh, subject to actual user condition. That is, actual user condition means whosoever is importing, he has to consume it and he cannot sell it, he cannot transfer it to others, he has to consume himself. And in the advance authorization, even if the export obligations have been fulfilled, even thereafter the material cannot be transferred. However, the exemption is that you can manufacture the goods, and if you have completed the export obligation, finished product you can sell in the domestic market, uh, but not the raw material. Uh, then prohibited items cannot be imported under advance authorization. Only some exceptions have been provided, but otherwise prohibited items cannot be imported. You can procure the item from state trading enterprise or domestically also, subject to rules. And restricted items, of course, can be imported under the advance authorization. And if the export item falls under the SCOMET item list, then you have to follow the SCOMET rules. You should also have an authorization for SCOMET items, and you have to follow the guidelines. But otherwise, the items which are freely importable or exportable, or even in the restricted category, can be conveniently and easily imported or exported under the advance authorization. But prohibited items, SCOMET items, and the items which can be procured from state trading enterprise, you have to be little careful. Then there are maybe cases that the goods are coming to you free of cost uh, uh, from the supplier. That is also permissible. Then domestic sourcing of inputs is also permissible. Uh, Instead of importing the goods directly, you can procure the goods from the domestic market, and this can be in two ways. One is against a invalidation letter. Invalidation letter is issued by the licensing authority. They will make your license invalid for direct imports. They will issue a invalidation letter, and then on the basis of invalidation letter you can apply for another advanced intermediate authorization, wherein you will be importing certain inputs duty free. You will be producing the goods and then supplying to the other advanced authorization holder whose license was made invalid for imports, and hence your obligation will be discharged like this. So uh, against an invalidation letter you can procure the domestic goods. Then you can procure the goods domestically against a advance release order. Advance release order means you simply make your license, get an advance release order. The and then that particular item will not be allowed you to import directly. You can procure it uh, from the domestic market, and for the supplier it will be considered as a deemed export, and he is eligible to take deemed export benefit as per chapter 7 of the foreign trade policy. Uh, Now, this advance release order or the invalidation letter can be issued at the time of issuance of license, or it can be issued subsequently. But the validity of this advance release order will co-terminus with the this validity of advance authorization. Likewise, the invalidation letter validity will also expire. It will be coterminous with the validity of advance authorization. Now, another condition of advance authorization is that value has to be export procedures have to be realized in free foreign exchange. Advance authorization is issued with an export obligation. Export obligation means if you are taking this input, then you are mandated to export a particular item with particular quantity with particular value within a particular period time, particular time. So that is called the export obligation. Every advance authorization is issued with an export obligation. Now, if I will very briefly discuss the procedural part of advance authorization, and the application for advance authorization has to be made in ANF 4A. It can be made by the registered by either by any of these registered office or head office or a branch office or a manufacturing unit of a REC holder. Suppose I am holding a I am having a manufacturing unit in Chennai, one unit, and another in Kolkata. So Chennai unit can also apply, Calcutta office can also apply. So there is, it is not that you have to go to only one licensing authority, like in the MEAS that there you have to apply IEC wise, but here you can go as per your convenience, even the manufacturing unit wise. So इसमें भी आप कर सकते हैं. और now the advanced authorization, one good thing is now it is online. Entire process is online. It has the application has to be digitally signed. It has to be applied in 4A, and no physical copy of advanced license is required to be submitted. All the documents which are to be annexed with the application can be uploaded, and if the application is as per the standard input output norms and it is found in order, time limit given to the regional authority to issue the advance authorization within 3 days. Even in the self-declared or non-norms cases, the authorizations are issued within 3 days, and entire process is online. It is without submission of papers unless until specified for, but otherwise it is online and paperless. Now, but the address which is from which the application advance authorization application is made should also appear in IC and RCMC. Now, wherever the standard input output or norms are not fixed, there are seven norms committee in bracket. In short, they are called NC. They are called. The full form is norms committee, and in para 4.06, it is given which norms committee is dealing with which subject. Basically, they are dealing with chapters. For example, if I am talking of chapter 29 HS code, then the case will go to NC3 like this. And the email addresses of all NCs are also given. You can communicate with them, or you can send your document at those given norms committee. The frequency of meetings of norms committee is generally every week, and all their minutes, agenda, etc., whatever is there, it is published online. It is all decisions of norms committee are available, and you can follow. In case one norms have been fixed for someone, you can take advantage of that, and you can also apply for that. Now, in case you have multiple units, the goods imported by one unit can be transferred to another unit, but with the prior intimation to custom authority. in case of merchant exporter, or if you are going to send the goods for job work, etc., you can declare the name and get the name endorsed on the advance authorization. You can make someone as a co-licensee who will also be responsible to fulfill the export obligation. But the requirement is that whichever addresses have been given, factory address or co-licensee or sporting manufacturer, at any given point of time, the goods which have been imported duty free should be there. And any movement of the goods, if at all it is there, it has to be with the permission of the uh, custom authorities. Now, there are certain items which are in norms which are allowed on net to net basis. There is a packing policy, there is a fuel policy. So, in case those items are appearing in Sion uh, footnote, then you can also net to net means, for example, in the case of component, you say that I will be importing 100 and without claiming any wastage, I will also be exporting 100. So, it is net to net basis. Although specific CON may not be there, but it is covered under the general policy, and on net to net basis you can apply for the license. Uh, in case standard input output norms are there, but you want to apply get something over and above, the case has to be referred to the norms committee. In the whenever your case is going to the norms committee, the norms committee can approve the case as applied or with the lesser wastage, or they can reject. But you have to give an undertaking that you will be abide by the decision of the norms committee, and in case the case is rejected by the norms committee, you have to pay the interest and the custom duty in case the goods have already been imported. And in case the wastage is claimed at a lower rate, is allowed at a lower rate, you can also on pro rata basis you can enhance your export obligation, or you can import the lesser quantity as allowed by the norms committee. Now, in case you are not satisfied with the norms committee decision, you can make a representation. Now, advance authorization when issued mention the export item, import items, values, and the in CIA value it mention the aggregate CI value. So it means you have the flexibility to increase or decrease the value any of your inputs uh, but your aggregate CI value has to be the same unless until some limit has been provided. And it will also mention the export product description, its value. And after you make an application to DGFT, you can start export. And even if you are have not been issued the advance authorization, your exports from the date of generation of file number will be counted towards the export obligation. Uh, now, uh, at the time of export, you have to, as earlier also I mentioned, that you have to mention the uh, technical characteristics and details of inputs used. Uh, Sometimes what happens that your application is rejected by the norms committee and you are already made some export. In some cases, there is a provision that you can apply to the custom authorities for conversion of your shipping bill to drawback shipping bill, because when you are making exports against the advance authorization, you have to mention that these exports are against advance authorization, and you have to mention the file number or the application number. But in case the norms are not approved, you can apply to the custom authorities for conversion your shipping bill from advance authorization to drawback, and you can go for drawback route. Uh, I also mentioned that uh, the goods can be procured domestically either against invalidation letter or ARO. All this also mention that item details, value, and all that. So that you can refer to para 4.31, 4.32, etc. Now, the after getting the advance authorization, you have to get it registered at the port of registration, which you have mentioned in the application. Exports can be made through any through any port, but import have to be made through that port from which you have declared as a port of registration. However, with the approval of custom authorities, it can be imports can be made from any other port, but generally it is from the uh, port of registration. But exports can be made from any port. Now, the name of the ports, it can be seaport, airport, ICDs or LCs. These are given in para 4.37 of the foreign trade policy. Now, facility of clubbing of advanced license is also there. When sometimes you mention the advanced license number wrongly, or you simply do not uh, uh, you mention the advance authorization of number of some other file, whereas you intend to export against some other file. So there is a provision for clubbing. Clubbing means your different advanced license A plus B plus C. There are three licenses. So import entitlement as well as exports of A, B, C will be totaled, and for all practical purposes it will be treated as one license. So there may be cases that in one license you have made excess exports, in one there is a shortfall, but after clubbing it will be treated as one authorization and your accounting will be done accordingly. But this is of course subject to many regulations, many restrictions are there which are mentioned in 4.38 of the handbook of procedure, which we can go through. Your license value can be enhanced or reduced anytime pro rata. Of course there is no problem, but you have to ensure that after the enhancement the value addition does not go below 15%, but otherwise absolutely there is no problem. If you are going to enhance the value, then you have to pay the fee. If you have already paid the maximum fee, no need of payment of fee. Now another very important point on the advance authorization is the validity of the advance authorization. It is issued valid for 12 months from the date of issue. In the uh, projects, the validity of the license is coterminous with the projects. One revalidation of 6 months can be given by the regional authorities, and second revalidation can be given by the after the first revalidation uh, to import the uh, pro rata imports proportionate to the export obligation already fulfilled. So to this extent, second revalidation can be given by the regional authority. Uh, you have to pay, make an application with the fee. So regional authority can initial 12 months, then first revalidation of 6 months, second revalidation of 6 months subject to the condition to make imports proportionate to the EU already fulfilled. Thereafter, regional authority cannot grant the revalidation. So you have to be careful that you import the goods within this period. Export obligation is 18 months from the date of issue of authorization, and similarly this can also be extended. Extension provisions are that uh, for one extension of 6 months can be given by the regional authority uh, with a composition fee of 0.5% of the shortfall in EU. Then second revalidation of 6 months further can be given by the regional authority provided you have completed 50% of the export obligation in quantity and value on pro rata basis. Pro rata basis means whatever you have imported in proportion to that if you have exported, and then it will be subject to a composition fee of 0.5% per month on unfilled FOB value. So basically, your what RA can give is 18 months plus 6 months plus 6 months. But beyond these, RA cannot give this EO extension. And in case you want more revalidation or more EO, you have to go to policy relaxation committee, and there the cases will be decided on case to case basis and with subject to such penalty, or it may be rejected, or it may be with certain conditions, so which you have to follow. Now, export obligation, it is also the duty of regional authority to ensure that once the export obligation period is over, it is the duty of the exporter to submit the document, and also of RA to monitor the export obligation. Then once you have completed the export obligation, you have to apply to regional authority in ANF 4F, showing all the export obligation, export proof. If the exports have been through the EDI ports, you have to link the shipping bill. EBRC you have to link, you have to produce a chartered accountant certificate on the consumption part, and then what the other documents which are there mentioned in ANF 4F, you submit to RA, and then RA, after seeing all the things that your exports are as per the advance authorization, imports are as per import authorization, and your everything is clear, they will close the case. Now, there are also provisions in case you are not able to fulfill the export obligation. In case it is not fulfilled quantity wise, that is, you have imported but you have not exported that much quantity on pro rata basis, you have to pay the custom duty and interest thereon. In case of shortfall in value terms, if the value addition achieved is more than 15%, then no penalty. But if it is less than value addition is less than 15%, then 1% of the shortfall. If the shortfall is in value as well as in quantity, for quantity wise you have to pay the duty and custom. For value wise you have to pay 1%. And you have to also give a chartered accountant certificate showing that whatever has been imported has been consumed. In case your consumption is less than, even the norms are fixed but your consumption is less, you have to pay the duties. Now I will quickly come to the DFIA. DFIA main principles remains the same, but DFIA there are that is duty-free import authorization. It also allows you the import of duty-free inputs, and also the import of oil and catalyst which are consumed, utilized in the process of production of export product. And but here one difference is that I will now quickly first I will mention that in DFIA only the basic custom duties are exempted. In advance authorization there are so many other duties which are exempted, but in advance DFIA only the basic custom duty is exempted. In case you are also using the duty paid raw material which are not there in standard input and output norms, you mention, and then you can get the drawback. It is allowed on post export basis, that is, first you have to export and then you have to apply for the DFIA. Simply you have to apply, then start export. Once your exports are completed, along with the documents you approach the regional authority, and when you have realized the payment you have exported, then they will issue the DFIA, and this is allowed only for those items where standard input or output norms are fixed. In case the applicant is manufacturer, merchant, exporter, then on every document he has to mention the name of the exporting manufacturer along with the GST number, that is on the bill of export, shipping bill, invoices, etc. And application has to be made first before any export is made. Application has to be made to RA, and they will generate a file number, and wherever the items are subject to pre-import condition, those are not allowed, or pre-import condition or with the actual user condition, those inputs will not be allowed in DFIA. Minimum value addition prescribed here is 20%, whereas in advanced authorization it was 15%. After you have completed the export, realize the free foreign exchange, you will approach the RA, who will issue you a transferable, that is duty-free import authorization, and this is transferable, that is you can sell it, you can transfer to someone else. The exports will be completed within a period of 12 months from the date of online filing of application, and for each CON you have to file a separate application. In case the exports are for EDI ports and for non-EDI ports, applications have to be filed separately, and if you are making exports from different non-EDI ports, then different applications have to be made. Then the validity of the DFIA is 12 months from the date of its issue, and here no revalidation is allowed. So you have to make sure that all imports against the DFIA, or the transferee has to ensure that all imports are made within a period of 12 months. Then there are some inputs which are mentioned in para 4.30, which are considered sensitive, and here the technical characteristics of all those items have to be given, and at the time of export, while mentioning the import item, you have to mention the technical characteristics also. Here also the duty in DFIA, the your RA is same on the same principles, and the application for DFIA has to be made to regional RA within a period of 12 months from the date of export, or 6 months from the date of realization of export proceed, whichever is later. Here the late cut provisions are also applicable in case you are not able to apply in the time. Then you can also apply for split up of DFIA with a minimum value of 10 lakhs rupees. Suppose your DFIA is of 1 crore rupees, so you can get 10 DFIA of 10 lakhs rupees each, or value of any denomination which you require. Now records have to be kept for advanced license as well as for DFIA for a period of 3 years. Now then I will come to difference between advanced authorization and DFIA. Advanced authorization can be issued for CON as well as non-CON. DFIA can be only for CON. Value addition in advanced authorization is minimum 15%, here 20%. AA is not transferable, DFIA is transfer. Validity is 12 plus 6 plus 6, which I mentioned. DFIA is validity, import validity 12 months, revalidation is not allowed. It is DFIA is only for post-export basis, duty which are exempted. In the case of DFIA, it is only basic custom duty, whereas in advanced authorization, so many other duties are there. And wherever pre-import condition is there, such items are not allowed in DFIA. Now, a question is, after understanding what is advanced authorization and DFIA and drawback, now the question is which scheme we should choose. So here we cannot have a thumb rule in that way. Uh, Nobody has a simple answer that whether you should go for advanced authorization or for drawback. It depends on the duties which are saving, your scale of operation, your export order size. I will say that in case you are a very small exporter, size of the exporter is very small, you do not have the infrastructure, and your all industry rate are fixed, then drawback is the obvious choice. Because of the complications of advanced authorization, it is subject to many regulations which I mentioned. Because that is hassle free, and if you are a very small exporter, then probably drawback is the better route. But the bigger you grow and the greater is the involvement of duty, and the you have the trained manpower and all that, so there you can start thinking of advanced authorization. But if your volume of export, you are exporting 80-90% of your exports of the production on a regular basis, then you can also think of going for EOU scheme or the SEZ, where you need not take any advance authorization, and all duties are neutralized from the very beginning. So this is up to you at what scale, how much regular exporter you are. I have made some comparison. So whether you should go for a advance authorization or drawback, take a piece of paper, note down these paper points, and calculate the cost in monetary terms and the cost in non-monetary terms, and then decide. Because the same exporter sometimes, for some consignments he goes for advanced authorization, for some consignments he goes for uh, in this drawback. So you have to make a detailed analysis at your own, keeping certain parameters in mind, and then you have to decide. Now the parameters is are in. I will now whatever I am talking of advance authorization is equally applicable to DFIA for this purpose. So in advance, application fee has to be paid. So it involves a cost. Then registration is required. Cost of chartered accountant certificate at the time of redemption, or in case norms are not there, you have to take a chartered engineer certificate in case of no norms. Then you have to make an application to the regional authority. Sometimes you have to follow up, and particularly in those cases where norms are not there, you have to submit the required information to the norms committee. Then you have to follow up with them. Then value addition prescribed is 15% or 20% in the case of DFIA, whereas in the case of drawback, no registration is required, no chartered accountant certificate is required, no chartered engineer certificate is required to be submitted, or then there is no requirement of any value addition, because this is on post-export basis. Then another very important point which you have to take into consideration is that how much duties are you saving, because whatever duties you are not paying in the case of advance authorization, then that is to that extent your investment is less, because you are not required to pay the duties. So your investments are less. For example, you are importing raw material of 500 crore and 30% the duty. So one option is you pay 150 crore rupees. But if you are taking advance authorization, you need not invest 150 crore. So your liquidity is you are saving on liquidity. Then to that on that you 150 crore rupee you are also saving the interest portion. So this is the big. But if you are going through the drawback route, you have to first pay, you have to incur interest cost, and then you will get a reimbursement or the neutralization after you have made the export. So this is the very big point which you have to keep into consideration. That is the investment and the cost part, which is you are saving in advance authorization, but you are not saving in the drawback. So then in advance authorization, if you are not eligible for execution of legal undertaking, you are supposed to execute bank guarantee, which involves a cost. Then in the case of drawback, there is no such requirement of execution, because you are claiming only after exports have taken place. So all your export obligations are already over. Now this is the cost part, but now I will come to some non-monetary aspects which are very important, which if you do not commit any mistake, absolutely not a problem. But the moment you commit a mistake, then from my experience I can share, मेरे को पता है एक एडवांस लाइसेंस में अगर जरा से भी कहीं पे गलती कर दी तो उस आदमी की क्या हालत होती है ये मुझे पता है। रीजनल अथॉरिटी उसकी बात नहीं मानेंगी, उसकी सुनेंगी नहीं, उससे गलती हो गई है। और पॉलिसी रिलैक्सेशन कमेटी जनरली उन चीज़ों को एंटरटेन नहीं करती है। वो तो गलतियां किस तरह की होती हैं? एडवांस ऑथराइजेशन नंबर इज नॉट मेंशन्ड ऑन एट द टाइम ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट्स। if you do not mention the advance authorization application number or the file number, then you will not get the it will not be considered in discharge of the export obligation. Or sometimes the number is mentioned but mentioned wrongly, because let us say किसी के पास A B C 3 लाइसेंस हैं, वो उसने पिछली बार का देखा A का नंबर था वही भरता गया, B का एक्सपोर्ट कर रहा है लेकिन लाइसेंस फाइल नंबर A का भर दिया। So even in those cases, then it will be counted towards export obligation of oil. Although clubbing provisions are there, but you never know whether clubbing, suppose if it falls outside the clubbing provision, then it will not be considered toward discharge of export obligation. So that is another thing. Then sometimes the description of the export item or the this is mentioned wrongly. HS code numbers are mentioned wrongly. These are all at the junior level, but if and in particularly in the EDI shipping bill, once the exports have taken place, generally no amendment is allowed. So in case the description is mentioned wrongly, because at the time of discharge or the EODC, RA will match the description. In case the description is not matching, that will not be counted toward the discharge of export obligation. So this is another common mistake. HS code number sometimes mentioned wrongly. Then sometimes import consumption is not recorded correctly. Technical characteristics are missing, or some description is mentioned wrongly. But in the case of drawback, since exports have already taken place, uh, and you are just following the all industry rate schedule, no such hassles. Then another common problem which I have found is that suppose if you are having 50 shipping bill in discharge of one advance authorization, you commit mistake in one shipping bill of any type. Since that will be excluded, your export obligation will not be counted as completed, and one shipping bill can put you in problems, and that can result into levy of penalty, levy of your placing the name in the denied entry list, So these are the hassles with the advance authorization. And one more thing is that suppose if you are going for advance authorization of a smaller value, or even sometimes you take the advance authorization order wise, then at the end you end up with 100 or 200 or 50 advance. Tracking becomes very difficult, which where export obligation is ending, where documents are lying. Sometimes the documents are mixed. So if in case you are handling large number of export this advance authorization, and you are not having the trained manpower, sometimes it becomes very difficult to handle. Sometimes the trained manpower leaves, new person is not able to test the old papers. So these are the problem. Then in case you are not able to import in time, you are not able to export in time, you have to go for revalidation, export obligation period extension, you have to pay the composite fee and all that. So it involved cost. But in the case of a drawback, no such hassles or cost are there. Sometimes if you are not able to fulfill the export obligation, the penalties levied can be up to 5 times of the CIA value. Another is that even if you fulfill the export obligation, material cannot be sold, or raw material cannot be sold. But in the case of drawback, you are getting money, simply you use the way you like. Then uh, people have also pointed out that in the international contract, buyer is very much aware that how much duty drawback you are going to get. So they bargain in the price that in the export, after you complete the export, this much you are going to get duty drawback. So you give this money. But in the advance authorization, you are not getting any kind of money. So many times either the buyer is not aware, or he does not consider that as a cost. Of course, in advance authorization, you can import the restricted item also. Uh, then in advance authorization, you have to account for all the inputs. You have to provide a chartered engineer certificate, chartered accountant certificate at the time of redemption. You have to keep accounts because the revenue of the government is involved. So sometimes the you are under a watch. Many times any authority can come, inspect, seek a report from you. So, but in the uh, um, case of drawback, since you have completed everything, there is no such hassles. Then one more thing is that even if you have fulfilled the export obligation, sometimes getting redemption certificate from the RAs is very time consuming. You have to do lot of follow up, and because the uh, number of shipping bills, BRC, they are very bulky. Matching of each shipping bill with the export product, it's time consuming. So sometimes it takes a lot of time. It requires a lot of follow up with the licensing authority. Then, so in case you are exporting most of your export product, then you can think of going for EUU or for SCZ also, and your operations are on a larger scale. And according to my experience, if 80-90% of your exports are there, and you are a quite medium size or large exporter, you can think of going for EUU or for SCZ instead of going for advanced authorization. But provided you have to take a calculations of everything. But if you are a very small exporter, or your order sizes are not big, or you are not frequently exporting, if all industry rates have been fixed for you, then probably drawback rates are uh, uh, is good, because it is very simple. And uh, even if you are have done any mistake, it is on your own account. It will not stop you uh, from your operation from all angles. Then another thing is that in case the application is on no norms basis, then and application is rejected, then it is solely your risk. But in drawback, there is no such risk. So basically, if you want to decide whether you should go for advanced authorization or for drawback, you have to take all these parameters, particularly the investment and cost part and the hassles, your manpower, your size of the order, and then calculate, and then ultimately it's a business decision. But these factors are important for you for consideration. I think now I will stop because it's 7:50, and अगर आप लोगों का कोई क्वेश्चन हो, I have tried to give you some ideas on this, but आप लोगों का फिर भी कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो it will be my pleasure to answer it in another 10 minutes, please. मैडम अगर कोई क्वेश्चन है तो बताइए.
So,
मैडम
so
हाँ जी.
mostly I have told them to mail us the question, so we
हाँ.
forward the query to you.
Okay.
There is one more Shrivas. I think he's typing. He should wait for like 1 minute.
हाँ.
Let him complete. There is one attendee who's writing. I'll just let him complete first, then I'll let him know, sir.
Okay. From my side, I think I have spoken. I have completed. So अगर कोई क्वेश्चन है तो वो बताएं मेरे को.
Yes, sir. वो एक attendee हैं जो अभी टाइप कर रहे हैं questions.
हाँ. ओके.
कंप्लीट कर ले फिर मैं आपको बताती हूँ.
हाँ ठीक है.
Yes, sir. There is one question. Is there tabulated format of AA slash DFIA versus DBK schemes to understand and assess merits and formalities for simpler understanding?
Answer is uh, in the legal text or in the published things there is no such format. This is after understanding both the schemes. I have tried to make my own table and to for the purpose of understanding. But if you do the Google search or some there you may find some articles here and there. But to the best of my knowledge, on the legal tax side, there is no such tabulated things.
Yes, thank you, sir. Now I would request all the participants to mail the questions to us. We'll forward your query to sir. Thank you, sir. We can wind up the session now.
Okay, can I leave now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, thank you very much to all the participants and thanks to IFT for all this. Thank you. I'll welcome any question. Thank you.